I climbed a mountain to escape life and got struck by lightning. What God told me up there will shake you to your core. If you've never felt exhausted by your own life, this might be hard to understand. You might not see why I climbed that mountain with nothing but a bottle of water, a notebook, and one unanswered question. After everything I've tried, what's the point of living? I was a straight-A student, good family, healthy body. No one knew I was slowly rotting on the inside. I still smiled, I still said hi, I still aced my exams. But day by day, I was quietly fading out of my skin. And no one noticed, not even me. Until one morning, I woke up and didn't want to hear a single human voice ever again. I just wanted silence. I wanted height. I wanted to rise so high that maybe, just maybe, I could see something up there that this world had never shown me. That's why I climbed that mountain. Not for the view, not for the workout. I climbed to hide, to disappear, to speak with something or someone who didn't need words. I climbed because it felt like something was waiting up there. Not true, not answers, just a touch. A glance, a sign that I wasn't crazy, I wasn't lost, I wasn't meaningless. The sky that day was gray but calm, no sign of a storm. I kept climbing. I've always been the kind who never gives up, and that's the problem. I didn't know how to stop. Even when tired, even when something deep inside whispered, "Turn back," I didn't. Then I heard a low rumble. I paused, looked up. And in that moment, I saw a streak of light flash across the sky from a distance. Then, nothing. No sound, no color, no thought. Just an enormous silence swallowing me whole. Everything vanished. My body, my name, my memories. Everything that had once defined me fell away. Only one thing remained. Me. But not the me I had known. A hollow, drifting sense of self. That's when I realized I wasn't here anymore. But in that very moment, stranger than death itself, something began to happen. I started to feel everything with a clarity I had never known before. Not with my eyes, not with my ears, but through a kind of wordless awareness, as if a dusty veil that had covered my consciousness for 17 years had finally been lifted. And if you asked me what I was thinking right then, I would only have one answer. Why did it take dying for me to finally understand what it means to live? What do you think was waiting for me on the other side? Endless darkness? Or some kind of light I never truly believed existed? Keep watching, because what I saw next wasn't like anything you've ever heard before. I don't remember the moment I left my body. There was no sound, no blinding flash like people often describe. I was simply no longer there. The part of me that could think and feel was still intact, but completely separated from the familiar shape I once called myself. I saw my body lying motionless on a jagged rock, eyes half open, arm twisted unnaturally. And yet, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't in pain. What I felt was a cold and distant unfamiliarity. Like looking at an old set of clothes I once wore long ago, now torn, faded, and no longer mine. I floated, not with wings, not by will. I just drifted, like a leaf detached from its branch, not knowing where the wind would take me, yet fully sensing every current of air brushing against me, as if I were the air itself. Not heavy, not light, weightless. And the farther I drifted, the more I realized something. I was no longer Noah Daniels. No name, no age, no memories. Everything that once defined me was peeling away softly, yet undeniably, as if an invisible hand was removing layer after layer from my soul, stripping it bare. I tried to remember my mother, her voice, her laughter, the way her eyes looked when she smiled, but I couldn't. I tried to picture my room, my school, the faces of my friends, but they all faded like the final flickers of a dream before waking. And then it hit me. The idea of a past had no meaning here. There was no time, no tomorrow, no yesterday. Only an eternal present, deep, vast, still as a lake at night with no wind. Then came the light. Not like the sun, not like a flashlight. It had no color, but I could see it. It didn't shine, but I knew it was there. And the strangest part of all, it didn't just let me see it, it saw me. I was being seen through by a light with no eyes, a presence, a someone or a something that didn't need words to make me understand that I was being touched by a kind of love I had never believed could exist. No judgment, no questions, no need to prove myself, just complete acceptance, as if it had known me long before I was ever born. And somehow I knew it too, not through memory, but through something deeper, a kind of recognition that had no name. I couldn't speak, yet 1,000 questions echoed within the silence, and one rose louder than all the rest, repeating itself like an unending loop. Who am I without a body? What am I without memory? And if I am no one at all, why am I still here? Have you ever been confused by your existence, truly undone by the realization that you still are, even when everything you thought you were is gone? Because in the next part, I'll share the moment when truth cracked open, and what I saw didn't just make me weep, it changed the way I see all of humanity forever. That light didn't speak with words, yet every fiber of my soul trembled like the strings of a harp being touched. It wasn't hearing, it was knowing. It wasn't seeing, it was remembering. Remembering something I was never taught. Remembering what I once dismissed as fantasy. Remembering what I must have known before I was born, but had forgotten the moment I entered this world. And then the being of light showed me. Not through a screen, not through a book, but by letting me live it all again, through a perspective that was no longer human. I saw Earth, not as the blue ball in a textbook, but as a living, breathing organism, wounded, aching. I saw millions of threads of light connecting souls, regardless of skin color, nationality, or religion. Just light, bright or dim, glowing or fading. I saw war, not just as bombs and bullets, but in every hateful glance, every cruel word, every divisive thought. Each one became a crack in the delicate web that connects us. I saw Israel, not just a land soaked in blood and tears, but wrapped in a strange, holy light. The being of light said nothing, but I understood that place is the center of the greatest spiritual collision in human history, not because of politics, not because one side is right and the other wrong, but because it is the mirror, the place where all of humanity's divisions and aching desire to be healed come into full view. I saw a man, tall, firm, imperfect, yet bound to Israel by an invisible thread. No one appointed him, no one crowned him, but he stood there, and the light passed through him like water through a pipe. I didn't know his name, I just knew this. Sometimes God doesn't choose the greatest, He chooses the necessary. I saw children being born with hearts brighter than any adults. I saw rabbis weeping silently. I saw atheists resting their heads on windowsills, whispering prayers through their desperate silence. And I saw myself. Not Noah, the straight-A student, not the good son, not the skeptic, but a trembling spark trying to find its way back home. No one judged me, but in that moment I understood more deeply than ever before. Every choice I made, every hour, every day, left a mark on a much greater canvas I could never see while I was still alive. I wept, not out of fear, but because, for the first time in my life, I was loved without needing to be worthy of it. And then I wondered, if everything I've just seen is real, why doesn't the world know? Why do we keep living as if there's nothing behind the veil? I thought that the more I saw, the stronger I would feel, but the opposite happened. The clearer the truth became, the more I unraveled. It was as if every great revelation stripped away another piece of the self I had clung to. There was nothing left to hold on to, no arguments left to win, no answer that could box in the mystery of life. Only layers upon layers of meaning crashing over one another like waves, and with each wave came a deeper, harder question. I saw religion, all of them, not as structures or rituals, but as rivers, all meant to flow into the same ocean. But we, humans, forgot the ocean. We built dams, dug canals, fought over drops, and called them the only truth. I saw Jesus, I saw Moses, I saw Muhammad, I saw the Buddha, not as people, but as different expressions of the same light. And in that moment, I understood. We don't need more religions. We need to remember what's already within us, what was there long before the names were ever given. And then I saw something even more painful, the quiet loneliness of millions who are alive in body but dead in spirit. They work, laugh, spend, sleep, love, raise children, but inside there's a silent desert no one hears. I saw people sitting alone in their cars at night, blasting music just to drown out the sound of their sobbing. I saw an old woman reading the Bible every day, not because of belief, but because it was the only way she could still feel her late husband's presence beside her. I saw a bullied child hiding tears in a drawer, scribbling words on paper no adult would ever read. And I saw one final truth, simple but overwhelming. Everyone is trying to find their way home, even if they don't know they're lost. I have no idea how long I was there. Maybe a second, maybe 1,000 years. But when the light began to draw back, when he or it or that presence started to drift away, I knew I didn't have the strength to remain. Then a voice, not a sound, but something that vibrated through the very center of my soul, spoke a single word: return. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay. I wanted to dissolve into that light forever. But no one gets to stay if they haven't yet fulfilled the reason they were born. And though I still didn't know what that reason was, I knew I had to carry what I'd seen back into this world. That was when I woke up. But waking up wasn't life. It was the beginning of the deepest loneliness I've ever known, because no one believed me, no one understood, and no one wanted to hear someone who had crossed death speak about what it means to live. In the next part, I'll tell you what that loneliness taught me and why it changed everything. I opened my eyes in a hospital room. The sharp smell of antiseptic hit me like a slap from reality. White lights, white walls. A doctor's anxious face hovered above me. The beeping of machines, the thump of my heartbeat. My body felt like stone. My heart was still beating, but everything else, the things I had just seen, touched, and felt, had slipped away like a dream abruptly severed mid-sentence. The first person I saw was my mother. She burst into tears when I woke, holding me like she feared I might dissolve if she let go. I wanted to tell her everything. I truly did, but my mouth was dry. My throat couldn't form words. And deeper than any physical exhaustion was a spiritual emptiness, as if when the light left, it had taken a part of me I could never get back. In the days that followed, the doctors called it a near-death experience. Some said it was just a hallucination caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain. They ran tests on my heart, my kidneys, my brain, but no one asked where my soul had gone. When I tried to share what I saw, they looked at me like I was some mild psychiatric case. And when I mentioned the light, Israel, the things no one could have known from a state of unconsciousness, their eyes changed. My mother cried. My father went silent. The doctors referred me to a psychologist. No one believed. No one wanted to believe. Because if what I said was true, then the whole world has been living asleep, and no one wants to be jolted out of the dream they've grown used to. My friends kept their distance. Rumors spread. Noah went crazy after getting struck by lightning. They laughed when I walked into class. Some told me I should write science fiction. Others just stayed silent, the kind of silence heavier than mockery. I began to withdraw. I stopped feeling hungry, lost all interest in homework, sports, and social media. Everything felt hollow. I watched people live as if I were observing a movie I no longer wanted to see. They got angry over petty things, argued about who was right, who was wrong, searched for love in places that had no heart. I saw it all, but I could no longer reach them. I didn't wake up healed one morning. I didn't find peace through a meditation app, a book, or some spiritual guru. My resurrection began with something far simpler, the quiet presence of a stranger. His name was David, an older man I happened to meet at the town library. He never asked why I came there every day, never questioned what I was searching for in all those thick books on religion, science, and metaphysics. He just sat a few chairs away, day after day, his silence like an unspoken greeting. One day, I blurted out, "Do you believe in something after death?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, his eyes deep like a canyon, and said quietly, "I don't believe, I know." I laughed, a breath of laughter, light and involuntary. It had been so long since I laughed, not because someone said something funny, but because, for the first time, someone didn't look at me like I was crazy for speaking about the world beyond. From that day on, we began to talk. Not with rapid questions or long explanations, but through images, stories, and silence. David never tried to explain anything. He simply shared that he had once died at the age of 32, that he had seen things no one believed, that he had stayed silent for 40 years, out of fear, out of weariness, because no one wanted to hear the truth that shattered the world they were used to. And then David told me something that changed everything. You weren't chosen to be a prophet. You were chosen to live. That one sentence felt like a key unlocking the prison I'd built around myself. I had thought I needed to do something grand, save the world, prove my experience was real. But no, all I needed was to live like someone who had died, someone who had seen the truth and now must live differently because of it. I began to write, not for anyone else, not to publish, but to remember. I wrote down every detail of the vision, every ray of light, every glance, every feeling. I drew the gate with no door, the land with no name, the light with no source. I let the words guide me back to where I had been, not to convince others, but to keep myself from forgetting. And I learned to listen again, to the smallest voice within me, the whisper I used to ignore, dismiss as weakness or emotion. Now, it's the only compass I trust. I didn't return to my old life. I began living a new one, quietly, silently, but more deeply. I no longer tried to be understood. Instead, I chose to become a living witness to something that can't be measured in words. After weeks of conversations with David, I realized something. There are truths no one teaches, no one tests, no one grades, but they shape the way we live every single day. And those truths didn't come to me from school or church or even my parents. They came in the moment I thought I would never wake up again. I started listening to the world around me with a different kind of ear, not to words, but to energy. I could see fear behind someone's nervous laughter. I could feel the emptiness behind the sparkling eyes on social media. I began to hear the silence where people tried to hide their brokenness. I stopped rushing, stopped debating who was right and who was wrong, stopped needing to be better than anyone. I began to understand. Every soul is learning. No one is above. No one is beneath. We're just in different classrooms on the same journey. And above all, I learned this. No one is ever truly abandoned. I used to think I was special because I had seen the light. But slowly, I came to understand the light wasn't just for me. It's always around us. We're just too busy to see it. We pass by each other every day without truly seeing one another. We live as if time is endless, until it isn't. I cleaned out my room, got rid of the clutter, took down the things that once defined my identity, awards, photographs, and old trophies. Not because I was denying the past, but because I needed space to live forward, with a soul that no longer clung to who I used to be. Every morning I write one sentence. Today, I will live as if this is the first and the last day. That one line reminds me, I may not save anyone, I may not convince anyone, but if I live truthfully, quietly, kindly, then the light I once saw will still shine through me, touching everyone I encounter. I've stopped searching for God in faraway places. I see Him now, in the way a mother holds her child when they cry, in the patience of a teacher with the most struggling student, in the moment I forgive someone who betrayed me, even if they never asked. I don't live to convince others to believe in my near-death story. I live so that even those who don't believe in the light might still feel a small flicker of it through the way I choose to live. And if you've walked with me this far, what comes next isn't a gift from me, but from what I was once allowed to see. It's a message from the wordless realm, sent to the heart that once believed it had nothing left to believe in. There's a vast distance between believing and knowing. Belief still leaves room for doubt. It still needs proof, but knowing is something no one can take from you, even when you can't explain it in words. I used to believe in logic, in math, in probability. I believed that everything could be measured, explained. Then I died, and when I returned, I didn't believe anymore. I knew. I knew I was not my name, not my face, not my titles. I knew that every moment of life, no matter how small, leaves an imprint on a field far greater than the universe. I knew that love isn't some romantic idea we watch in movies. It is the energy that makes all life possible. I knew that every person remembers something they were never taught. I'm not telling this story to convert you. I don't speak for any religion, any doctrine, any claim to ultimate truth. I'm just someone who died and came back, carrying a blurred but deep memory that changed how I live, hour by hour, breath by breath. I live more simply now, slower, quieter, but deeper. In every conversation, I listen as if it might be the last. Every person I meet, I try to truly see them, as if after today, we might never meet again. And every mistake I make, I don't hide from it anymore. I place my hand on it, look it in the eye, and ask, "What did you come here to teach me?" I'm no longer afraid of death, but I no longer take life lightly either. I once wanted to leave this world because I saw how fake, shallow, and broken it was. But now I understand. It's because the world is broken that it needs the light. And that light doesn't descend from heaven. It begins within each one of us. I'm not a better person, just a truer one. I don't live to be accepted. I live so I no longer betray my soul. I don't need you to believe me. I just hope one day you'll sit still long enough to hear your soul whisper back. You don't have to die to see what I saw. You just have to pause. One quiet afternoon, one early morning, one moment of deep, honest silence. And then you'll remember. You'll remember that you are not just skin and schedules and expectations. You are a piece of light, learning, growing, aching, wandering, but never forgotten. You know, there's one truth I've come to hold after all of this. The light doesn't come down from heaven. It leaks out from within the person brave enough to live truthfully. None of us was born to know it all. We were born to forget and then to remember. Born to get lost and then to find our way. Born to break and then learn to love even the broken pieces. Coming back from death didn't make me a prophet. It made me see people more clearly and more painfully. I see the sadness in the eyes of a store clerk who smiles all day for customers, then buries her face in a pillow at night, unnoticed. I see the weariness in the shoulders of a father who always has to be strong, who's never allowed to fall apart. I see the silent insecurity of a young woman who posts hundreds of perfect selfies, but can't bear to look at her bare face in the mirror. And I don't see these things with my eyes. I see them with a heart that once stopped beating. What breaks me most is this. We've grown used to hiding our souls just to make others comfortable. We trade our inner truth for outer peace. We go silent while our souls scream. And one day, we forget the voice was ever there. But the light doesn't leave. It waits, like a mother standing on the porch in the rain, waiting for her lost child to come home. The light doesn't scold, doesn't force, doesn't condemn. It simply waits for you to turn around and whisper, "Are you still there?" I've started living like someone who keeps a flame, not a fire that roars to conquer, just a small, steady flame, warm enough to thaw the hands of someone trembling, quiet enough to remind them, you are not gone. Every kind act I do, even if no one sees, I know, and the light knows. Every time I choose forgiveness over resentment, listening over arguing, stillness over needing to prove, I'm laying a small stone on the path that leads a soul home, maybe even a soul I've never met. I once asked the light, why was I allowed to see these things? And the answer didn't come in words, but it was etched into me permanently, unmistakably. Because you will tell the story, not with your words, but with your life. And that is the quietest yet most sacred calling any soul who returns from beyond must learn. Not to preach, not to prove, but to become living evidence of something the world is desperately longing to believe in again. And if you're reading this or hearing this, then maybe, just maybe, you're beginning to remember too. In the final part, I won't tell you anything more. I'll simply ask you one question, just one. And maybe, just maybe, your answer will change everything. I've told you everything. There's nothing left to hide, nothing more to protect. From the nameless light to the loneliness of returning, from a death that felt like a gentle touch to a rebirth heavier than 1,000 winds blowing against me. It's all been said. But the most important part isn't what I saw, it's what you are about to realize. Because you're not just a listener, you're standing at the same crossroads I once faced. Will you keep living the way you always have? Or will you live as if you've never truly lived before? No one can force you to believe. No one should try to convince you that the light is real. Because if what I've shared is true, the light doesn't need to be proven. It only needs to be recognized. And maybe, just maybe, you've already seen it yourself, only by another name. A strange dream. A sudden awakening in the middle of the night, with your heart stilled and silent. A moment standing before nature that made you cry, not from sadness, but from remembering something you never learned and never forgot. Have you ever gone through something no one believed? A moment outside your body? A glimpse of a light that didn't belong to this world? Or maybe just a single time when you looked at someone and for a split second saw not their face, but a soul, struggling, surviving? I don't need you to agree with me, but I believe if you're still here, still listening, then you're searching, not for answers, but for a quiet confirmation that you're not crazy, that you're not alone, that you have not been forgotten. So let me leave you with one question. Have you ever died and never told anyone? If the answer is yes, then this is where you can begin. The comment section below isn't just for reactions. It's a space waiting for stories that have never been told. A quiet room for wandering souls who are finally starting to remember the way home. If you've had a near-death experience, if you've seen the light, if you've met someone in a dream who felt like they came from beyond, tell your story. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be true. Because the light doesn't come to explain. It comes to awaken. And if you're not ready yet, just leave a single dot. So I know you're here, still breathing, still listening, and that one day you'll tell your story.